Um, Hi everyone, welcome to this fourth episode of season 3 of the Future of Urban AI. My name is Hubert and I will be your host today. I'm the founder of Urban AI, a global organization dedicated to urban artificial intelligence. And for this fourth episode of season 3, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Alex Taylor, who is actually reader at the University of Edinburgh. We apologize for this mistake. And just before sharing more info about this session, just some elements of context about season 3 of the Future of Urban AI. So the Future of Urban AI is an ongoing collaboration between Cornell Tech and Urban AI, and for which we are every year exploring the future of urban artificial intelligence with worldwide experts. For this season 3, we already had the privilege and the pleasure of welcoming amazing urban AI experts to discuss the use of AI for sustainable cities, the use of physical AI last week with Brandon Barbello, and 3 weeks ago with Shane Shi, how we can use generative AI to better explore urban environments. All previous episodes, including the ones I just mentioned, but also episodes from season 2, season 3, are available on our YouTube channel. So feel free to access this YouTube channel. I will share the link in the chat if you want to see any of the previous episodes. Season 2 report is also openly available on both Cornell Tech and Urban AI websites. And lastly, we are currently doing a collaboration between Cornell Tech and Urban AI to map how artificial intelligence can be used for climate adaptation in urban environments. And we will also share more info about this project, which is following of the Future of Urban AI webinar series. But today, as I told you, we have the great pleasure of welcoming Alex Taylor for a project called AI on the Street. So a beautiful title, and we are really looking forward to learn more about this project, Alex. As usual, we will first have between 20 and 25 minutes of presentation from Alex, and then 20 minutes of Q&A session with all of you. So if you have any questions you want to share, any remarks, feel free to use the chat, and it will be asked at the end of the session. The presentation, sorry. Alex, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the invitation, Herbert. It's been a while since I've been on one of these webinars, so it's very strange not to see the audience. So it does feel a little bit like you're talking into a vacuum. So hopefully there are some people on the other end. So as Herbert said, I want to talk about a project that I've been involved in that began in February 2024. It was a 6-month scoping project funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council in the UK. So it's an academic research project. And as Herbert said, the title of the project is AI in the Street, Scoping Everyday Observatories for Public Engagement with Connected and Automated Urban Environments. So today, I'm just going to talk, so we've only got 20 minutes in broad brush terms about the project. And I want to look at one thing in particular. So we're currently involved in the analysis of the results that we've got from the work. And I just want to throw one thing out there to the audience and see maybe it's something we can pick up on in the discussion. So let's get to the slides. Very briefly, I just wanted to say a little bit about myself. I'm a sociologist. I work at the University of Edinburgh in an institute called Design Informatics. I have a history of working at the intersections of sociology, everyday life, and AI/technology, and in some situations looking at urban settings. So, for example, probably about 10 years ago now, we did a project called Data in the Street in Cambridge, where we worked with a street for a year, trying to understand their relationships with data and what they might want data to be for the street that they lived on. And these are just a couple of pictures of some things that we built or we placed in the street to get people to start thinking about their data and how they might use it. Again, happy to talk about some of that perhaps in question time. But just to say, that sort of arc of research that I'm interested in is how technologies such as data and AI start to become commonplace in everyday settings and urban settings in particular. So back to the project. The project itself is made up of a group of academics and creative practitioners in 5 urban areas. So that's Cambridge, Coventry, Edinburgh, Logan, Australia, and London. And in each of these areas, we located a street or a neighborhood in which we put these what we called everyday AI observatories, and I'm going to talk a little bit about those in a moment. You can find, and I'm going to try and paste a link in the chat if I can get to a summary of the project and some of our results. How am I going to get to the chat here? Don't see my. Okay, I might have to do that when I stop sharing because hold on.
Alex, we can share it later if you want. We can do it by email or no reason.
I've just found it, so it's popped it in the chat. So yeah, as I say, we one of our collaborators is a policy think tank called Careful Industries, and they're hosting the results of our work. It's a great website that summarizes the work. And I highly recommend having a look at that if this is your area of work or research. So back to these observatories. So as I said, we decided to pick 5 different streets or neighborhoods to focus on. Each of them have a slightly different aspect or orientation to technology and AI. So just to call out a couple of these, in Coventry and Logan in particular, there was a really clear presence of AI. So Coventry in the UK, for those of you who are from the UK or may live in the UK may know, is well known for being a car manufacturing city. And it's also a site where driverless cars are being trialed. And so there is a street in Coventry where they have a test bed that's been heavily instrumented. And so this was the street that we chose in Coventry. So in this case, a very clear manifestation of AI and how people might orient to it. So one of the observatories was on this street in Coventry. In Logan, there's a drone delivery trial being run by a subsidiary of Alphabet called Wing. And there's a very interesting history of how parts of Australia are being used as these trial sites for technology and various other interventions that trial innovation in all its varieties. Hi, Anthony. Nice of you to join us. So again, in Logan, we have this really clear manifestation of AI, in this case, drone delivery. In the 3 other cities that we've chosen and the 3 other streets that we've chosen, the manifestation is a lot less clear. So obviously the work that I did was largely centered in Edinburgh. And what we wanted to do was just pick a street where we thought some interesting social issues were at hand. The street we chose is called Leith Walk, and there's a real sort of set of issues around gentrification on Leith Walk. And so we wanted, if you like, the AI to sort of bubble up rather than to find an AI that was already present there. So there's this sort of contrasting set of locations where in some cases the AI was very clearly manifested, and in some cases the AI was something we had to go out and look for, and that was intentional. So as you see, we've got these 5 sites, all slightly different, and using slightly different methods to engage with them. So as social scientists and designers, we're particularly interested in innovative methods for engaging and participating with the public. So that was a key area of our work. So I just want to talk very briefly about some of the activities that we conducted in Edinburgh to give you a flavor of the kind of work that we did. So one of the things that we did initially was appeal to the public and through various social media channels and through handing out flyers, etc., on the street, in this case on Leith Walk, to go on these data walks. So data walks are a method that have been used. I don't know if they've been presented in this series already, but they're commonly used in urban settings to get people to think about and orient to technologies that in some cases are sort of hidden from view ordinarily. And so we went on walks with people who volunteered to be part of these activities and asked them what do they see as important or relevant with respect to data and AI in their street, on their street, in this case on Leith Walk. So we did these data walks. We also, in parallel to these data walks, used WhatsApp. So, nothing too exciting here, but it was a nice channel to start to record some of the things that people were sort of highlighting and pointing out to us. So we actually sent groups out on their own to walk down. Leith Walk is probably about a 2 kilometer road, quite a long road in Edinburgh. So we sent members of the public down in groups and asked them to share points of interest with us on WhatsApp. And so here we've got the use of loyalty cards in supermarkets were noted as something that may connect to AI on the street. And also this electronic advertising board that has a camera sort of pointed at it. So clearly someone's watching, but of course we don't know who. And then one of the final things we did on the street was we designed an installation or an intervention where we created this very simple black box that you peered into, and you could see some text that was scrolling through various ideas and themes and topics around AI in the street that had come up during the data walks. So if you like, sort of feeding back some of the things that people had already talked to us about to a wider segment of the population. So we had this black box on the street for a full day. In particular, we got a lot of engagement with it in the afternoon as people were coming home from work. And what we also did was we got people to hand write their comments, and we've got a stack of cards in response to a series of prompts that we asked people. So hopefully what you get a flavor of there is this range of methods, creative methods, to engage the public and get them to talk to us about what they see to be relevant and important to them around the presence of AI on the street. This is just some snapshots. We asked the public if they were okay with us sharing photos, and so you see here 3 of our people who engaged with the black box on the street. I should say, as with all academic research projects, we got ethical consent for this work, and all participants signed informed consent sheets, etc. So again, just a couple of snapshots of other things that went on at the other observatories. In London, they were particularly interested in this idea of mapping streets. And that's not just the technical elements of streets, but the social character of these streets. And so they used this projector onto glass and got people to sort of map an overlay onto a protected image of the street. So really nice method there. And so obviously the conversations that they had with the public and various other people, experts, etc., were really important to the project. In Cambridge, the particular focus was on accessibility. And so this is just an example of how the street had been instrumented with some sensor. No one really knew what it was, and the the signage that was associated with the sensor was on a nearby lamppost, but it was covered with other signage. And you really had to sort of dig deep to find out what was going on, and who had installed this box. And this box was perversely around the use of pedestrian use of sidewalks, etc. But it had blocked the sidewalk. So one of the people who was in the research project was in a wheelchair and couldn't use the sidewalk. And then finally, as I've said, Logan was focused on this drone delivery trial, and they've produced a really impressive short documentary film. I'd really encourage you to have a look at it. It's short, but it really gives you a flavor of the work that they did there. And I've just popped the link to that in the chat. So do go and have a look at that. So I just want to spend the rest of the time. Hubert, how long do I have?
You still have like 5 minutes if you want.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes very quickly talking about this sort of thread of results that I think are interesting. Of course, there are many ways to talk about this project. But this one in particular, I think, raises some issues, and I'd be curious to hear whether this resonates with others who've been involved in studying or engaging the public with AI in the public sphere and on streets, for example, in urban settings. So you can see here that there are a number of sort of general findings that we've gleaned from the 5 observatories. Just as an example, the claim we're making is that AI is present through proxies. It's not clearly manifest as AI. We ordinarily see it through things like loyalty cards or advertisement boards or some sort of street level intervention around driverless cars. So these boxes that are on the side of lampposts, etc. So we rarely sort of see AI manifested as AI. And what AI is, of course, in an urban setting is still an open question for many of us, I'm sure. Of course, AI is trialed in very selective ways on very particular streets. So we've seen in Coventry and in Logan, there are particular reasons why those sites were chosen to trial AI. So this sort of historical and social context of why AI is being situated in particular places is important to think through. I'm going to skip that slide. So just let me come then to this point I want to make. So something that we found in working with those who engaged with the observatories was that AI manifests in these kind of exceptional forms and in very sort of mundane ways. So they're used in, as I said, loyalty payment cards, remotely monitored digital advertising displays, traffic management, automobile and pedestrian counting systems, and so on. So mundane and routine things that are sort of already part of the way in which we use our streets. So the thing I want to note here is that these are often sort of data infrastructures. And so when we think about innovation, we're not seeing the kind of innovation that you often hear about with AI. It's more an extension of the infrastructures that we are already very familiar with. And that these infrastructures also consolidate the ordinary infrastructural architectures that constitute the urban realm. So things like logistics, transport, monitoring and surveillance, and commercial and transactional operations. And you see here some examples of those at the different sites. So in a sense, what we're talking about here is an invisibility to AI. Because it is so mundane, it's simply not something that's present in people's minds. It's something that you, in a sense, have to draw their attention to, the public's attention to. and then talk through how AI is actually present within these routine infrastructural technologies. So in my academic community, in sociology and elements of computing, there's a lot of talk of AI ethics. And of course, one of the big things is this idea of explainable AI, as though making visible and legible AI is an inherently important thing to those on the street. Our experience from the observatories is that it's not. That idea of explainability isn't, in fact, something that's important to people. What's far more important is quite a simple question, and that's this question that's on the slide. What are we getting back from AI? That's the thing that sort of pervaded all of the observatories when we talk to people, is like, it's taking something from us, but what are we getting back from it? So just let's think about that question. And this was the sort of question, this is the sort of question that was asked of us. So first, we here is grounded on the street. We're not dealing with people or places in a general or generic terms. So through the observatories, we're being told or instructed to pay attention to how people live in places in distinct ways. So this is what as sociologists or social scientists we would call situated, that actually AI is situated in very particular places and very particular social and historical settings. And we need to understand what those historical and social settings are to understand that relationship. The second thing about that question is this sort of point about getting back. And getting back suggests that people are aware, very aware of having something taken from them. This getting back speaks to a sense that AI isn't currently giving back, that it's actually operating at a different level. And then when it does engage with us, it's not really treating us as situated actors, but is in fact very extractive. AI, as it is understood on the street, is seen as compounding a status quo, a form of social life that people feel offers very little to them and that they are not happy with. The question this leaves us with, those of us who are sort of developing and thinking about the building of AI in urban settings, is what would it be to get something back, to give something back from AI on the street? So to sort of invert that idea of extraction, if you will. We can talk more about that maybe in the questions, but I think what this sort of raises questions for us is this sort of emphasis that is placed on explainability. And actually maybe we need to be thinking about what I would call this reciprocal deficit, that people don't feel like they're getting something back from AI. That actually in the urban realm, and some of you will already know the work of Jane Jacobs, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. She talks a lot about this idea of building a web of trust and this idea of reciprocity, that you give and you take. And the sense on the street from those we've engaged with is there's a lot of give, but there's very little coming back to them. And so this erosion of trust through what we're calling a reciprocal deficit is really the thing that we kind of observed in the observatories, across all the observatories. So that's kind of my key sort of takeaway for today, is that there's this sort of imbalance between what AI is doing as an infrastructural material on the street, if you will, and what people in the public sphere feel like they're getting back from AI. And certainly we can find things that they are getting back, but it's hard and it doesn't feel equal, if you like. It's far more extractive than somehow equitable. So that's all I've got for you today. Hopefully I didn't run over, and if there is time for questions, I'd love to engage with you.
Thanks a lot, Alex, for this fascinating presentation. I have to say that resonate a lot also at personal level on what we also are doing actually. So really thanks for this. So if you have questions, feel free to use the chat to ask your questions. I will maybe use my privilege of host to ask you two questions, Alex. First one, you told it in your presentation, but in your opinion, why is it so important to make AI in a sense visible and physical in the street? You mentioned like the web of trust, of reciprocity, but yeah, like do you have also other arguments in mind for this? And last question, how can we make AI give back what it's getting? Like, so you presented your observatory, but do you have in mind other projects or recommendations to make it to create reciprocity with urban AI?
Okay. Let me try and start at the beginning there. So we talk about two forms of invisibility. So the first is a technical invisibility, and I think that speaks to this sort of question of explainable AI, that much of the emphasis in the technical circles of AI is to somehow expose the computation, to reveal how the AI does what it does. The other kind of invisibility that we talk about in this work is what we call a social invisibility, that we're not sure what the AI is doing to us or for us. And so that's the thing we want to expose and make visible. And I think this sort of emphasis in the technical circles on it revealing the computation is probably not what people have an interest in. They want to know, why is this camera pointing at this advertising board? And what is that revealing? So, of course, what it is likely doing is monitoring whether the board is working or not. Um, but it's also probably checking that it's showing what it should be showing. It may be checking, who's passing by as well. We don't know that. Um, but what the commentary we had in Edinburgh was, none of this advertising is relevant to Edinburgh or this street. It's about betting shops or supermarkets or something that aren't relevant to this particular area. And so there's this detachment from the social, if you like, with AI, and that's what we're talking about when we talk about visibility here. So I guess what's important to me to sort of emphasize is, this isn't a talk saying we should be doing explainable AI. It's different to that. Um, the second question on reciprocity, and this sort of web of trust that Jane Jacobs so eloquently wrote about. Um, I think if we think about the spaces we live in, the social and urban spaces that we live in, those that we enjoy and that we get the most out of are about building connections. And what Jacob was so good at writing about was this idea of eyes on the street, that we pay attention to what happens on the street and others pay attention, and that we give and take in that kind of visual attentiveness. And that's what makes a place trustworthy and safe. Um, but when someone is doing that in a way that we don't feel we're getting back from, then that web of trust, if you like, starts to erode. Because why are you watching us? Would be, and one of the things that came up in our observatory in Edinburgh again, which really resonated with me, was um, one of the women talked about waiting at the tram stop. And if something had happened to her, if, for example, she felt threatened, there was a camera pointed at this tram stop. But she said that that camera and whoever was using it, the result would not be police being sent to that location immediately. It would be maybe a sort of statistical event that might then get used to make a stronger case for policing in the neighborhood. But it's not for her, and it's not for her in that location. Whereas, of course, Eyes on the Street from Jane Jacobs was all about, I pay attention and I respond. I'm there, I'm on the street with you. And so this sort of detachment from what's being surveilled through AI and watched through some kind of human network of connections is really stark in this work. And what I'm not trying to do is harken back to, an urban life of the 1940s and 50s, but it's to recognize that something's going on here that we need to be thinking about. In terms of, what do we do to give back? That's the big question of it. I mean, I think that's the next stage of our work would be to think, yeah, what are the ways in which AI might be manifest that felt sort of relevant to people's experiences? Um, I think, well, for me at least, this question of sort of situating AI in highly local forms that did feel like it was relevant to people's experiences is a nice starting point. And I think there's probably room to explore things in that way. So, how is AI made relevant for the situational contingencies of a place and its historical contingencies? And I just don't think that question is taken seriously because AI operates at such a generic level. So I think there's some scope there to explore that.
What one question, and then I swear I will ask your question in the chat in the chat. What do you mean by situational contingency? Like how AI could do this?
Yeah. So, that's really kind of, I guess, a blunt answer to that is if the advertising that's being pushed to a street is so generic that people on that street feel like it's just not relevant to them, then well, what is this AI? Because it's not incredible, it's not particularly intelligent. Um, Likewise, if we take somewhere like Coventry, where we have this driverless car trial test bed, um, again, the sorts of histories and contingencies of the automobile manufacturing that's going on in Coventry is not spoken to in this test bed. Why is this here, and how is it contributing to Coventry as a city? Is not a question that's being addressed, and yet the history of Coventry is so key to the manufacture of automobiles, etc. And I think that's something that could be explored.
Thanks a lot, Alex. We have question from Anas, who is asking actually, because indeed you said in your presentation, what are we getting back from AI? And so Anas is asking, what should we expect from AI?
Yeah. So yeah, a similar, I think, question to you at the end there. Um, I do, I suppose I would encourage us all to start thinking, how is AI made local? Maybe that's a kind of comparative term to the situated. Because if you think about the way AI works right now, it is about extracting data from many, many places and creating a set of statistical rules or norms that, in a way, is removed from the specificity of place. That's how it works. That's why it works well in some situations. But it's surely we should also be asking the question: how do we situate it in such a way that it is relevant to the local? And that's not a profound point, but I think it's something that's not really been addressed.
Thanks, Alex. Nikhil first is saying that he loves the takeaway about situational reciprocity. Similar question, did any participants share example of what they might want in return from AI on the street? So it's indeed related to previous questions. And is there a tangible way for residents to financially benefit from their participation in urban AI systems?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. So I don't know if this is an example of it, and maybe it's a counterexample of what I'm arguing, but I just wanted to maybe say, because actually some of our participants picked up on the fact that we have a tendency to be too negative about AI. So let me just say one example of where it really worked well. One of the people who join the data walks in Edinburgh works on a charity on the street that we had our observatory on. And because of the growing number of people coming to Edinburgh who don't speak English, Google Translate became this really key technology for them. It allowed them not only to visit this charity and ask for support, but to engage in the public realm in a way that they wouldn't have been able to otherwise. So to get jobs, to find their way, to talk to people, etc. But I guess if I were to try and connect that to the sort of point of reciprocity, of course, Google Translate does work at this sort of level of extraction. It's scanning the internet for talk and language. But in this sense, it's being used for a very particular set of purposes that are distinct to Edinburgh and Leith Walk, that this neighborhood has a large immigrant population and that they have to deal with, particularly immigrants from Ukraine, etc., deal with the challenges that people face if they don't speak English. So it gets appropriated for the particular purposes of this place, and it works well in that sense. So I guess, I'm not sure, as I say, it may be a slight contradiction to the point I'm arguing, but I think we do see it being used in a way that feels kind of grounded and local.
Very interesting. Thanks a lot, Alex. I'm seeing remarks from Adrienne. Adrienne, are you still with us? Okay, I was wondering because Adrienne Schmocker is also an urban AI expert from the community working on related topics. So I was wondering if you wanted to join as panelist to directly exchange with you. But in the meantime, we have a question from Xiao Fan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. Is there a project paper associated with that immigrant example?
There isn't, because it was an anecdote from one of our participants. I've not seen it referenced elsewhere in that way. I think, this is a nice example of how the technical starts to interweave with the social. And as I think the question points to, we don't often hear about that in the academic literature. So, I do hope that's something that we get to write up a bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Well, thanks a lot, Alex, really, for this fascinating perspectives, consideration, explaining also what could be maybe AI in the future, that it's more than what we don't see today, how to make it like tangible, visible. That was really fascinating. That's already the end of this episode. We will meet again next week, same time, same link, to talk this time on responsible sensing system. And we will also discuss and talk about data physicalization. So it's quite related to what you share, Alex. Thanks to all of you for joining, for your attention, and take care.
Thank you. Thank you.